On this edition of City Profile, I'll be talking with former City Commissioner and current City Commissioner Carol Gault. Please stay with us. Hello and welcome to City Profile. I'm Tom Butler, and it is my distinct pleasure today to be talking with, I'll just say my friend,
there you go,
Carol Gault, who at one time was a city commissioner.
Correct.
Became not a city commissioner.
Correct.
And is now a city commissioner again.
That's
so
right.
Do you know of any other time when that's happened?
I don't. I'm sure it has happened. Well, I can tell you right off the top of my head, Commissioner Abraham had served a term in the early 2000s,
right.
And then he came back on when I came back on in 2008, or that election started in 2009. And so I know that it's happened at least that other time before, but I'm sure it's happened previously.
Well, so we have a new mayor, 3 new commissioners, including yourself, and one incumbent commissioner, Sandra Wilson. So it's kind of a new administration down there.
It is. It is.
And since you've been there before, you had a perspective. I talked to the mayor and talked to him about what people say when they come into office. They have all these grand ideas and they say what they're going to do and they make these promises, and then they get into office and they find out things don't work the way they thought they did. Did things change much between the time you weren't a city commissioner anymore and then you were reelected?
Yes and no. The one thing that has not changed that remains the same, and I learned this the very first week I ever served, is that you can't get anything done at City Hall unless you can count to 3. And that absolutely means that the mayor has the same vote as a commissioner, and because there's 5 on the board. So unless you have a majority, nothing gets done. One person cannot put their agenda forward and say we're going to do this just because I won this election, or we're going to do anything at all. It has to be a majority vote. So that has not changed. It's still the same, and everyone still operates with that rule of thumb. What has changed is we have a new city manager, and that's a very politically volatile position, if you will, and so it's a difficult place to be. And anytime you have a new city manager, it's just a new way of doing business. They have their own style, their own form of leadership, and so those things do change.
I forgot to ask you at first, but this is the first time I've interviewed you as a new city commissioner.
Right.
You've been on several times before in the past. Tell me a little bit about who you are and why you think that it's a good thing to serve the city as a city commissioner. Why did you want to be a city commissioner again?
Sure. I was reared in a very active family. They encouraged us to participate in anything and everything that we thought would make our community better. So when you come out of that mindset, you often just start out doing things, volunteering in your community and things like that. I had been very active in downtown development and saw where there was a need, and I felt like I could bring some things to the table just because of my experiences. So I enjoyed doing it then, and after I left, I figured I really missed it. I realized how much I missed it and how much I enjoyed it. And I always think if you can do something that you enjoy, it's not really work. So therefore, I threw my hat back in the ring.
So it wasn't about like the big bucks y'all get for.
No, I hate to say it was not.
Well, you mentioned downtown, and that's not something that we talked about before the show in our preparation. I know you've been passionate about downtown, and there's a lot of things happening downtown. Some are kind of controversial.
The City Block Project has been very controversial.
The City Block Project is, I have heard probably more negative things than I have positive things about that. So why don't you update us on what's going on with that, the theories behind that. Is parking going to be horrible? That's what people seem to be worried about the most, is parking. So do you support the project? And if so, why do you think it will be a good thing for Paducah?
Well, I have to say, when I was campaigning, that just as you, most negative, that's what I heard as well, mostly negative. But by the time I was in office, the contracts were already signed, the deal was already done, so that baby's in your lap. It's just there. We've got to work with it, make it work, find a way to make it work. And Wayland Ventures is a very stable company. They've had a lot of experience in downtown Louisville. They've done very well with what they've done, and I think they're very choosy about the places that they go, and they're very choosy about their projects. So all of that's on the positive for Paducah. I think it will be a great thing once it's happened. What has been the most controversial, I think it's not necessarily the project in itself, it's the location of the project in that lot, because so many people have, for years, depended on it for parking. We do have several other parking structures and areas, and I use the word structure because it's just designated as that. You know what I'm saying? I don't mean a true garage, although there may come a time when we need that. But studies show that we have plenty of parking, but the problem is it is 3 or 4 blocks away.
Yeah.
And even though we have street parking, and people in this area really don't think about walking very far.
Well, I'm a little lazy myself sometimes, even though I really love to go down and walk my little dachshund down by the riverfront. If I'm going to visit somebody, a vendor or a business downtown, I want to park as close as I can.
I think we all
really
do.
think, and I know that's bad because I should want to get more exercise, but I think that if we have to walk 3 or 4 blocks, that might be a deterrent for us to do that. So.
Well, there will still be parking in that lot. As I understand it, and the way that it's scaled, there still will be public parking in the lot. It just won't be the same number that's there today.
Right, and during construction.
No.
Well, and do you know how long construction is supposed to take? I know that you never really know about that because of issues that come up during the process.
Correct. And we've had some delays, just in general. There are certain boxes that the city had to check and certain boxes that Wayland had to check in the initial agreement, and there have been delays in those. So for me to, I think at first we thought they would break ground this fall. That doesn't look like that's going to happen, but that doesn't mean the project's not going to happen. But there have just been some delays along the way. So for me to tell you it's going to be 18 months or 24 months from now, it depends on when they turn that first dirt.
For those of us who aren't familiar exactly what the scope of the plan is, what is it? What are we going to build? I know there's a motel,
correct, yep.
And maybe some shops, but I'm not clear on what is going into the project.
Well, and there's almost like where you see there are those things that you mentioned, and then where you see in the front area where the gazebo is now. So people could visualize in that kind of L-shaped area right in through there. There'll be almost like a promenade. The city is responsible for putting in certain infrastructure, but almost like a park-like atmosphere. So people can gather and they can enjoy the space. There are lots of those things that are in the design now.
It's supposed to be a nice looking place that you walk into, and then boutique motel, is that what we're calling
I think
that?
it is.
So
I think
kind of special.
I want to say it has 80 rooms maybe, right off the top of my head. The number has changed somewhat throughout the process, so right off the top of my head I want to say 80 rooms, and it sits in that kind of back corner area, the footprint of it, and so there's plenty of space around for parking and other amenities.
The other project that the city's working on, and I guess probably the mayor said he was a pleaser. I understand that. I am too.
Me too.
I want to make everybody happy.
Me too.
And man, you've picked a wrong place to be if you want to make everybody happy, I'm assuming.
It's the 20-60-20 rule. That's the other thing I learned.
Okay, tell me about that.
20% of the people are going to love you no matter what you do. Absolutely, it doesn't matter. They're going to be your cheerleader and be in your corner. 20% are going to hate you no matter what you do. You just simply cannot please them. It's the 60% in the middle that you need to worry most about.
And on that note, the athletic complex started out as, I'm thinking it was way less than 20% that were really happy about the way that thing was seemingly pushed through, almost disregarding a whole bunch of folks' opinions about the building of the aquatic center.
That's what I was getting ready to say.
Not
Right,
the
right.
athletic complex.
Right, I think
but
that's
this
where
is
the
extension
distinction of, right.
of that. So would you talk about the history of that and where we are now?
Of course, I wasn't on the commission when all that came into
Right.
being, but as the way I understood it, it was the county agreed to do the sports complex, which are the ball fields that we all talk about now, and the city was going to do the other portion of that, which was the aquatic center. The aquatic center is what I heard most,
Yes.
the most negative about. So that was kind of put on pause, put on the back burner, and now we're all on board with, even though the $20 million had already been bonded and the money was sitting there to do the aquatic center, we felt, this new commission felt like there were better things that needed to be met. We had some needs as opposed to wants, if you will, like the 911 system, storm sewer, those kind of things. So we've kind of divvied up that bond money, and then there's a portion of it that is going to help with the sports complex, which is the ball fields.
So you have to educate me because I'm ignorant about bonds and things like that. So when you put out, is it called a bond issue or a request or whatever, that means people are buying bonds, which are investing in Paducah.
That's it.
Are they not investing in a specific project? Like, were they not investing in the aquatic center? And if they were, how do you go about taking that money that they were thinking was going to be used for another project and use it for other things?
Well, there's a bond board, and when you make the proposal to first do the work, to be able to sell the bonds, there are certain boxes, again, that have to be checked so that people understand what that project is and what the investment is for. But because of the city's credit rating and because of our revenue, that's actually what backs the bond. So the bond isn't necessarily dependent on what that project is, which is a little different than, in some ways it's different than if you would go to the bank to borrow money. But in other ways, as long as you have the income that can cover that, they really don't necessarily care where you're spending your money. I mean, they don't want you doing anything illegal. They want you improving the community. Those are the boxes I talk about checking. But as long as we have the income to cover that, then we can continue to bond money, but that's not necessarily a good place that we always want to be.
Right. And forgive my ignorance again, has a location been chosen yet for the athletic complex?
It has. Bluegrass Downs was donated
that's right.
to the county, and so that, with a portion of Stuart Nelson Park, is where they're starting with the design. And
is there a timeline on that yet?
I went to the last Sports Tourism Commission meeting just in attendance. I'm not a member, but I just went just to learn. And they have done a request for proposals with people to come in and help them learn how to operate the complex.
Right.
And then they have plans, and the final plans are in the process of being drawn. So my guess is going to be 24 months or so.
I wonder if that will affect the Greenway Trail, which I know is in that area, if it's going to be that big, and if they'll have to reroute that or anything like that.
I don't
I'm just
know the
thinking off
answer to
top
that
of my
yet.
head.
Yeah, I know there were lots of issues. They're still in the point where they're meeting with engineers and they're talking about drainage and wetlands and replacement of those kind of things. So I don't know that they've reached that point yet.
Okay, let's move on to something else.
Go ahead.
911.
Yes.
That's been in the news lately. I was here at this college when 911 came into being. We did the first commercials promoting it, and so that's been probably in the neighborhood of 25 to 30 years since we've had 911. What is the current status and what is happening with that service that is provided to our county and city these days?
I'm not saying you're an antiquated system, but
I am.
it is a very antiquated system. It is a very antiquated system. It's reached its end of life. To get parts for it's very difficult. That's not something that we can just call a vendor now and get. We can't just do that. So it is to the point where we have to make some changes. It affects its functionality. So we're to the point where something has to be done. We can no longer kick the can. It's a safety issue for our community. And again, part of that bond money will go with that. We just signed an MOU with the county to work together on that because they're one of the other largest users of that system. Mercy Ambulance, there are other people that do use it, but it's all dispatched through that. The city and the county together are the largest users, and right now it's a city-owned system, and Chief Laird is over the system.
It's kind of interesting because my view of how 911 works is not that it has users. It's that a citizen calls and says, hey, I need the police, or I need a fire, and I need an ambulance, and then the 911 operator says, okay, I'll get those out.
Right.
So I don't really understand about users. How does that work?
Well, I use the term user just simply because we kind of view them as customers, not the people that are calling in
Right.
needing assistance. I'm talking about the people that are using the system on the back end, which would be the police and the fire on the city side, or the volunteer fire departments and the sheriff's department on the county side. When there are other options, you can have your own system. You can contract with other people. I believe Mayfield contracts with Post 1 at the state police center.
Right.
I believe they contract with them, and so that's what I mean by user. The county, the city, Mercy Ambulance, but all those are going through our 911 system right now, which is a city-owned system.
And so they help pay for it?
They do.
Okay.
They do. They do.
And so going to be an upgrade to the system or a complete overhaul? And
it will be an upgrade. About 4 years ago, we received a report on the things to keep our ratings and our standards up to par, what we needed to do. Some of those things have been done along the way. You know, we have some new controllers, we have what they call telephony, all those things, a lot of those things have been taken care of. The major thing that is radio towers now. Even the city's gone ahead and purchased new radios, but the towers are so antiquated at this point to be able to, there are lots of places you don't even get reception because we've grown so much as a community. So that's going to be the next, and it's a big ticket item.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. You know, I'm really irritated when I'm in a spot somewhere where I can't get cell phone reception, and so
Well, just imagine if you were a police officer.
Yeah,
and you needed backup.
That would not be good to me. So that sounds like something that really needs to be done.
It is. It is.
And a good investment in the safety of our community, because most people, probably you included, would say that's probably your priority for our community is safety. So what other priorities do you see as just your personal priorities? I know that you're only one. Got to have three.
That's it.
You've educated me on that.
You got it.
But I assume that you have to kind of build a coalition sometimes.
You do.
And so
You do.
if you were going to build a coalition, what are some of the things that you would like to see happen?
Well, what I have really enjoyed about working with this commission is that we kind of came out of the gate, had a get-together in January, a retreat, and we selected several projects that we were all in agreement or all in alignment that would be a priority that we wanted to get done in the next 24 months. 911, I was very passionate about, and that's of course on the list. The airport terminal, you and I have talked about that just briefly.
Yeah, we may talk about that here in depth a little bit more in a minute.
But the mayor was very passionate about that. And we all were in agreement. Reverend Henderson was very passionate about the Southside project. You know, we were all in agreement. There was each commissioner brought something to the table that they wanted to make sure that, you know, we took note of, and so we were all in agreement about those things. And I learned early on in my first couple of terms that in the grand scheme of things, if everyone has their trash picked up, if they feel safe in their community and they're driving on good roads, the rest kind of will fall into place. And I know that sounds so silly, but those are the things that we deal with on a daily basis. If you think about it, you deal with trash daily. You worry about whether you're in a safe community or not. You want to be able to place that call to 911, and you feel a sense of comfort when you're out and you see a police cruiser. And then you're driving day in and day out on those roads.
Right.
It makes a difference.
Well, one of the things that the city has that the county doesn't, that as a county resident I'm really envious of, is the recycling program that you have. I think that is really so cool, because when I am in a position that it's convenient for me to recycle, most of my trash is recyclable.
That's right. That's right.
And I feel like that's a really great thing, is not to be putting that stuff in landfills, but for it to be used again. Do you know if that is do you even break even on the recycling program?
I don't think that we break even. I really don't think that we break even. I think that comes down to just a service that we've decided that we wanted to provide. It's quality of life.
Gotcha.
Basically. But early on, I remember the numbers, we really did not break even, and I know that the market for some of those things has tanked, if you will.
And that's a problem with a lot of green projects, and the merit is good, saving the environment, reducing carbon footprints and things like that, but it really is not a cost efficient way of doing things. And so that's something that I'm sure as a city you'll be dealing with more and more and more in the future as we get new regulations and things on how we have to do things. You mentioned the Barkley Terminal, which maybe I shouldn't say this on TV, but when I go into that terminal, I almost feel like I have gone back in time a little bit.
Well, and I would agree with you, but I've always kind of felt like that was kind of cool.
Well, it's
you know,
not
it's kind of
necessarily,
retro.
it's not necessarily bad, but I almost think that people coming in to our town, when they see that,
You're right.
it's not necessarily a positive thing for them.
You're right.
And so is there a project to upgrade the terminal, and can you update us on what's going on there?
I have not seen the plans for the terminal, but I do know that there's a substantial amount of money being invested. I also know that it's everything from the sewer pipes all the way down to the aesthetics. So I know all those things are being taken care of. Unfortunately, I don't think that we'll be getting a new carrier, a new airline in that will go somewhere other than to Chicago. I consistently hear that as a complaint, that people don't understand why they have to fly out of here to Chicago and then head south. But I don't think that there'll be a new airline anytime soon. I think they've ventured into that, and it's a substantial amount more money, and they felt like the money would be better spent upgrading the terminal at the moment.
All right. The other project that I've been to a couple of forums on was the South Side project, which you often mention. Can you bring us up to date on, I know we've had some meetings.
We had some meetings on the South Side with the whole commission present, just to hear what was important and what was on people's minds, what they wanted to see happen. And then the next thing that took place this summer has been the Rise and Shine project, where it was, I believe it was over an 8-week period. Sections of the South Side were divvied up, and trash containers were brought out, and people just tried to beautify and clean up the area. It was just a place to start with, just a little hard work, a little elbow grease, and the city provided cans and dumpsters and things like that to be able to take away that, and it's really made a difference. And it was a great way for people to get to know their neighbors and to get involved in the community. And I think people are, I think it's going to be, and I don't want to say the next Lower Town, just because Lower Town was such a anomaly, if you will, but I really do think it's going to be the next place to invest. It's going to be great.
And I'm not as I'm really more familiar with the different parts of downtown Paducah, like Lower Town and the artist districts, and then the newer one was the Fountain Avenue area. So I can identify those with landmarks. The South Side's a little bit different because I didn't even know the boundaries of what really meant South Side until I went to a couple of those meetings. So where are we really talking about trying to improve?
I think what we're going to have to do, because it is such a large area, when you think of Lower Town or you think of Fountain Avenue or even downtown, you know, it was basically a 13-block area. I think what we're going to have to do is divide the South Side up into phase 1, phase 2, so that there's a concentrated effort in those areas, but we can't do that and then leave the other one behind.
Right.
So it's gonna be a well-timed dance, but I really do think that that's the way it's gonna have to be, because it is such a large, massive area. You know, like from Dairy Queen on into, you know, some would say that City Hall's on the South Side.
Yeah, I kind of think of it as really about the South Side Walmart, and then I don't know where it ends as you go out. You know, I know that one of my favorite places to eat. It's hard to drive in out there, but it's not in the city.
That's
not
right.
in the
That's
city.
right.
So you know, it's unclear to a lot of folks, I'm sure, where that's talking about. But like Clement Street, I know I used to go to church on Clement Street. That would be in the city, and at one time that was a real vibrant community, and it has fallen into disrepair some. And that might be an area that I'm just speculating that the city might pick to.
Right, exactly.
make
It's going to be an area like that. And we've looked at like from Washington over to Caldwell for the first one. And Catterjohn's Pharmacy's on Caldwell, if that gives people a landmark to know where that is. And the spray park's located on the front side of that. You know, those are the kind of areas I think that we'll have to determine and start the investment in a section, and then.
So it's kind of like the Lower Town area is that, you know, when you come into that area from the interstate, sometimes that doesn't make a great impression on not Lower Town, but before you get there, on travelers coming into Paducah. And the same with the south side. You know, if you come through some areas that just don't give curb appeal to people, then, you know, first impressions are a big deal when people come in. And so if we could improve some of those areas so that they look better and that they work better for the people that work there, that'd be good. We have a couple of minutes left, and I don't think this topic takes a lot of time, but I read a little bit about the Remote Workers Program. Tell me a little bit about that as we close up our show.
Well, what we're trying to do is we want people to move to Paducah, and we're offering incentives from internet service to cash to come to the area and basically live and work at least for a year. And there are some things that you have to fill out, but I want to say that I'm having to think about it. I haven't thought about it in a minute, but I think it's $2,500. I think for a year they'll pay your internet services. There are different things that go in the package, but basically it's to get people. So many people are working remotely now. And Paducah is a great place to rear your children. We have low crime. You know, the cost of living here is fairly inexpensive. So it's a great place for a family to be. And so if you could work from anywhere, what better way than to be here where you can have all those amenities of a larger town. And of course then that affects our tax base and helps the city grow as a whole.
Sounds like an interesting program, and I hope that some people take advantage of that.
Me too.
And that's going to have to do it for today.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming in on this warmish, humid day and talking to me about things going on in the city. So my guest today has been City Commissioner Carol Gault. Appreciate her being here, and I appreciate you being here. Join us again next time. I'm Tom Butler.